The information provided in this podcast is educational and not intended to diagnose or treat medical conditions.
Dr. Doni Wilson struggled for decades to solve her numerous health issues and heal her body. But with focused determination, she healed herself. And in doing so, she discovered the Dr. Doni Stress Recovery Protocol. On this show, you're going to hear from doctors, nutritionists, and experts, along with Dr. Doni, who will give practical advice and wisdom to help heal your body. This is How Humans Heal.
Hi, and welcome. I'm excited to introduce Ginny and Danna, who are here with me today from Thyroid Refresh TV. And they are just amazing two women who have went through their own struggles with their health, especially related to the thyroid, and then decided to join together to create a support platform for other people who are struggling and dealing with thyroid issues in particular, to motivate them and inform them and encourage them that it's possible to feel better. So thank you so much, Danna and Ginny, for being here with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, it's so great. And I was thinking that we wanted to share today about some of the struggles you hear people having, like what are their main obstacles to healing? What are you hearing from the people on your support platform? And what are you finding really helps them get through those challenges and to, sort of get past the bumps in the road and on with their healing process? I also want to hear about this game you've developed to help people with their healing process. So, but first, tell me a little more, each of you, what got you here? What about your health story really motivated you to want to share with others and help others?
I'll start. I'm Ginny. Thank you so much for having us here. We're excited to be here, and we always love talking to you, Dr. Doni. So we're excited about your well, I guess it's not so new anymore, but your newish podcast. So
yeah.
I was diagnosed in 2011, shortly after the birth of my son, with hypothyroidism, and just had the standard treatment of levothyroxine, synthetic thyroid hormone, and that was pretty much it. Only my TSH was tested. I didn't know any better, and I didn't feel well. I was tired all day, every day. I was dealing with weight issues in spite of being, in spite of exercising and eating less and all of those things my doctor was telling me to do that weren't working. I was sick all the time. I would get, a virus like a cold and wouldn't really be well for months because that cold would turn into, tonsillitis and an ear infection. And, it just went on and on
after the next.
Yeah. And that was 4 years, the first 4 years of my son's life. So I was, new mom, and it was really challenging. And I finally hit rock bottom, which isn't the worst thing that can happen, because that's where we get motivated to make change happen. And I just started doing my own research. I just knew this isn't right. I would continually, tell my doctor, I just don't feel like myself. This isn't normal for me. I used to be someone who never got sick. I used to be someone with a lot of passion and fire and energy. And I feel like my light is going out. And she just, you're just getting older. I was in my late 30s. It's just the aging process. You just have to get used to it, things like that. Well, I finally decided to do my own research. First thing I learned was I needed a complete thyroid panel. I learned I had Hashimoto's, which, is obviously autoimmune hypothyroidism. That just opened up a whole realm of information to me about things I could do, things I could eat differently, lifestyle factors. And I also found a new doctor. I started working with a naturopath, and she helped me figure out what tests to do. She spent like an hour and a half with me. I'll never forget that first appointment. I felt so heard.
Yeah.
finally, and not dismissed. And she said, this isn't normal. It's not okay. And it's not normal for you to be sick and tired all the time.
It's not. Yeah.
Let's get to the bottom of this. I will be your health detective. And we did a bunch of testing. We found suspect number 1, which for me happened to be gut dysbiosis.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started treating that, there were other things we found: food sensitivities, some micronutrient deficiencies, etc. But when we started treating that gut dysbiosis, it was literally about 48 hours before it was like somebody flicked that light switch back on inside me.
Wow.
And
So you really,
I've been pretty good ever since. I'm not saying, do I have 100% perfect health? No, I don't know if anyone does.
mm-hmm.
But I feel like myself again. It was like, boom, oh my gosh, I had completely forgotten that it was even possible to feel like myself again. That was a very life-changing experience for me that motivated me to, my career had already changed. I was a cooking instructor and my background is in food. I couldn't eat the same way. I was having to figure out new recipes. I had always had like a recipe blog. And so I ended up deciding to start a recipe blog called Hypothyroid Chef. And that's how Danna found me. And the rest is kind of history. But I started that just to sort of connect with others, share what I was learning, share the rest. It was like, well, I'm going to be cooking and eating differently. Why don't I share the recipes I'm coming up with other people who are hypothyroid? And, it just sort of blossomed from there. And now, obviously, we have Thyroid Refresh, we call it a lifestyle support platform for thyroid patients. And Danna and we are thyroid patients. So we say it's created by thyroid patients for thyroid patients because we've both been through this. And we were really inspired to create a place where people like us could connect, and also where it didn't have to take them 4 years to feel better. They could get the answers they need and the resources they need faster and pointed in the right direction of, oh, this is the expert. Oh, I heard Dr. Doni on this podcast, this Thyroid Refresh podcast, and I have to check out her blog, connecting even many experts under one roof so that people could get connected with the answers and the resources that they needed to thrive and to get their lives back.
No, it's so, and a lot of people even struggle for more than 4 years, because you're, like you said,
Yes.
A lot of times in the conventional medical world, they're not necessarily, part of their thing is not to really educate or share with you. They're going to just give a diagnosis and give a prescription. But there's so much more to it with the thyroid, and it can be so unique and different for each person. But like you're saying, you really had this knowing that you could feel better, and knowing that there had to be something you can do. I mean, maybe it was also your background in food that helped you know, like, what we feed ourselves makes a difference to our health. And, it sounds like that was quite a transition for you, to transition from the food you were choosing. And how that was, what was that experience for you, as a chef?
I always ate what I consider really healthy. I mean, looking back, I was eating, whole grains, lots of organic produce. Organics have been really a commitment of mine since I was, since my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I've always really loved problem solving when it comes to food. So like in culinary school, the mystery basket challenge, here's 4 things and you have to make something out of them. So I think I just inherently was drawn to that challenge of, okay, I had learned at that point, just through my own trial and error, my brain fog, and I had debilitating brain fog where I felt like I couldn't drive a car sometimes. My brain fog really lifted when I tried eliminating grains for a month.
Wow.
Just those, you make your human guinea pig experiences. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of started to figure out, what are the things that don't work for me? What are the kind of common core recommendations for thyroid patients? Obviously gluten is number 1, soy, dairy, sugar, alcohol, etc. How can I make recipes that are not dreary, because I love food and I love to eat. My husband and I love to cook. I come from a family of great cooks who love food. It wasn't okay with me to just have drab meals that were, dietary compliant. There was a little bit more to it. So I embrace that challenge. It still excites me. It's definitely, I think, a passion I have and something I love sharing with people. I like to help people by sharing those solutions.
Well, and I like the word refresh in your guys' name, Thyroid Refresh, because that sounds like refreshing for people to know that they can eat healthy and still have it taste good. And that, how wonderful for you, to just, be inspired by your own process and then share that with others. I think that's so beautiful. Danna, share a little bit about, I know you and I've known each other for a while with some of your prior work, but share with us a little bit more about what inspired you and how you in connecting with Ginny.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my story isn't unlike Ginny's or unlike so many other patients out there, but at the same time, it's completely different. I was diagnosed in 2012 while living in Costa Rica. And so it was different. I remember going to the doctor when I was younger, and you go to the doctor and the doctor says you have a sinus infection and you go home with these medicines. And then so that's what I was used to. And I wasn't until later that I realized that it was such a blessing that I got correctly diagnosed while living in a second, third world country. But I did. So I had really strange symptoms. I had like this really low grade fever, which was, like 99.9, 100, just this I was feeling flush. I was really tired, like I had just had a baby, which I hadn't. And so I had some really strange, I'd always had like thin fingernails and thin hair. And I've always had a lot of the symptoms, but never really enough to associate it with anything. And so once I finally did get diagnosed, I went to the doctor. We got properly diagnosed. I got a full thyroid panel or close to it. Here I was in Costa Rica. It was pretty close to a full thyroid panel. And she said, you have, thyroid disease. And so that was pretty remarkable. And then she sent me to a specialist who was from Costa Rica, but had also trained at Columbia. So, he took me into the office. We did an in-office ultrasound. Is that what it's called? Yes. In-office ultrasound, and said, you have Hashimoto's. That was fabulous to know and to get that. Here I am finding out way later. That was fabulous to have that in-office opportunity. And I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. He basically said, you have low thyroid and you have hypothyroidism, and here's your medicine. Here's your, T4. He didn't say that. He said, here's your, off-brand of it from living in Costa Rica. And, go home and take your medicine. So I did. And I was thinking it was going to be like another appointment like I had always had. You go to the doctor, they give you the pill, and you feel better. And I didn't. I got worse. I started teaching more. I was a Zumba instructor, started teaching more, thinking that diet, exercise, that plenty of exercise, extra exercise wasn't going to hurt me. I was really tired. It wasn't until about a year later where I decided, you know what, this is not working. Clearly, this is not working. I'm getting worse. And so I started finally asking questions. So I moved away from that paradigm of, going to the doctor, get the pill, and got to where I learned, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to have to be a self-advocate for myself. So I started learning that. And then I also kind of felt as if I was alone living in Costa Rica with this disease that no one really understood. So I started an online site. And then I started this podcast where I started connecting with amazing doctors like you. And I started asking the questions. I started learning all the different things, all the different testing that I could get. And so I started wanting those things and wasn't able to do that living outside of the United States. Once I did move back in 2016, I did get lots of the testing. I did find a doctor. I'm still, of course, on my journey, but I should feel lucky, and I do feel lucky that I was properly diagnosed. The problem was that he didn't tell me it was autoimmune. He did tell me, but he didn't emphasize it. And there wasn't a lot on the internet, which is why I started my first website. And I didn't realize how much I could take the disease and my symptoms into my own hands. It wasn't until later, after, like I said, I come back to the States and met, doctors like you. And so I started finally doing the things that I knew I could do on my own. And unlike Ginny, I don't really like to cook. So she is a fabulous cook. I've been to her house. She's cooked several things for me. She's an amazing cook and chef, and I don't really like to. So that aspect of it was different for me. I didn't really like to, like someone was saying the other day that, that they know someone who eats the same food every day because and I was thinking, even though I really like food, I could eat the same thing more often than probably Ginny because I don't like to cook as much. And one thing I did,
you're more of a master of exercise.
I am, but I did find that the food and eliminating all that stuff, I did find that gluten wasn't necessarily something that resonated with me, although I knew that gluten was bad and all that. It wasn't until I took grains out of my diet that I started seeing, like Ginny mentioned as well, the brain fog lift and that kind of thing. I did some other things like self-care. That was never a word that, of course now everybody's heard it a lot, but a couple years ago, that word wasn't, so well known. So I started doing those kinds of things and spending time not being the victim. And once I kind of did that and started giving myself time and wanting it to be fun, Ginny and I got connected and we started to make our platform fun and lighthearted. And once I started feeling the aspects of that and the after effects of that, I started doing my own healing. And I took myself out of that mindset of you always have to talk about thyroid and it's negative. And once we kind of bridged that and moved into the happier parts, the silver lining parts, I started seeing a big shift and my numbers started changing. My thyroid numbers started coming down. I started doing meditation and easy exercise, walking and slow, just 5 minutes yoga, 10 minutes yoga, those kinds of things. And that's when I really noticed the shift for me, was really just kind of like taking a step back, looking at it a little bit differently and making it, work for me. So.
Wow. And I think like what I really hear is that part where there's an acceptance that you went through, like kind of accepting that this is my body, this is the situation going on in my body, the autoimmunity, the low thyroid, recognizing that was related to how you were feeling. And then realizing, hey, it doesn't help for me to just be bummed out about this. Right. What's going to help is for me to be proactive and solve it and figure out what can I do with this situation to make the best of it and make the best of my health. And I can see completely now why you two have created this support platform, because you both are just so warm and supportive. Overall, I'm sure everyone feels that way. Where would people go to find your platform and access it and participate?
thyroid-refresh.com is our online lifestyle support platform. We like to say it's the O magazine for online support, and it's very beautiful. But the game that you were referring to earlier is a little bit different. I'll let Ginny tell you a little bit more about that, since I've been talking this whole time. But we actually do 4 seasons. We have games, and so we do a new game, every season. So we have one coming up. We're in the summer of 2020 right now, so we have one coming up, and that's another thing that really helped me once we started kind of getting into this process and changing the conversation to happier ones. That's naturally me. I was a cheerleader. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to support. And once we started changing that, it really kind of lifted my spirits. I didn't know I was in that mindset of victim and as much until we started kind of playing our games and using our platform. We created what we kind of needed and wish we would have had. And so once we started doing that, I started feeling, positive. And so it's a lot of fun, and I'll let Ginny tell you about Thyroid30.
Yeah, so this was really the lightning bolt idea that sparked Danna and I's partnership. And I think we make such a great team because we're so alike in some really fundamental ways, like our philosophy and our attitude. Like we both love to dance and we love to have fun and we like to laugh.
Mhm.
And we're also total opposites in some way. Like she was saying, she hates to cook, and I'm more like the nerd, and she's more like the social butterfly, so we really balance each other out, but we also have this appreciation that this is a part of our life. Maybe we'll get really lucky and we'll be able to go into remission, but who knows? For so many thyroid patients, this is a lifelong diagnosis. It's what do they call it? Like a lifestyle disease, right?
Mhm.
So why not make it fun
Mhm.
and create a place where we call our community thyroid thrivers? People are attracted to us who are ready to embrace what we call thyroid healthy living. So we came up with this idea that what if we could create this gamified 30-day challenge, essentially. We actually call it a wellness adventure. We didn't want to call it a challenge because thyroid patients, they have enough challenges. We need to have fun reaching our goals. We need community support. So with Thyroid30, once per season or 4 times a year, as Danna said, for 30 days, players join a team, and every day they score themselves on what we call the 8 daily rituals of thyroid healthy living. So we call them the 8 R's for short. They're all R words. So like, remember, did you remember to take your medication and supplements today? If so, you get a point. Refuel. That's everything you put in your mouth, everything you eat and drink. Reactivate. Did you get at least 10 minutes of physical activity? Appropriate for you, of course, but did you get at least 10 minutes of physical activity today? Repair is, did you do one small thing today to support your gut health? That could be something like reading one of our articles on gut health from an expert, or it could be taking a probiotic, or whatever it is. 4 is rejuvenate. That is, did you spend at least 10 minutes today on self-care or stress reduction? I'm sorry, did I say that was 4? That was 5. 6 is reduce. Did you take one small action to reduce your exposure to toxins? Like, did you drink filtered water today, for example? So it sounds, the 8 daily rituals might sound overwhelming, but a lot of these are really easy to get and can be like 2 birds, 1 stone kind of thing. 7 is relish. So that's where every day you connect with your team, you check in each day, you score yourself, which builds a lot of awareness. And we have like a social platform where teammates connect with their team. And so you get a point for, say, posting a status update or commenting on someone else's status, and it could be anything. Like, I have a question about,
whatever, anything.
Yeah. I mean, people asking questions, people sharing recipes, people sharing resources they like. Oh, I found a really great clean sunblock I wanted to share, things like that. So the team aspect and the community aspect of the game is really special and life-changing, and has been one of the most delightfully surprising things to us about just the power of that community support, especially a positive healing community. And then finally, the last R is recharge. So each player sets their own sleep goal. So mine's usually about 7.5 hours. If I get that 7.5 hours, I get my recharge point. So it's customizable. We don't prescribe, you have to do it this way and take these supplements and eat these foods, because as you know, we're all bio-individual. We all have unique needs, sensitivities, and the healing journey is, it really what it is a commitment to lifelong health. And it's about adopting that mindset of, I'm worth this, and I embrace myself. I love myself enough to give myself what I need to thrive and to make this a priority in this really positive community atmosphere where I actually have support. That's something so many of us can just completely lack. And we hear this from a lot of players. They start out really shy and they're like, I don't want to check in every day and talk about my personal, illness on here. And by the end, they're like, I am so glad I found this community. I've learned so much from these other players. And it's just been super fun. So yeah, Thyroid30 is kind of our baby, and why we created Thyroid Refresh in the first place.
Something a lot of people don't know is that too much stress can actually create an abundance of health problems like high blood pressure, high blood sugar, anxiety, migraines, insomnia, even fertility issues. This is because high stress puts your adrenal glands on overload. They release cortisol and adrenaline, which controls your digestion, hormones, immune system, energy, focus, and even your emotional response. So how can you beat stress when you don't know where to start? That's why we have a free 7-day stress reset program. It's designed to help support weight loss, digestive healing, and hormone balancing. It includes support for integrating self-care. Daily tips come to you by email and video, gluten-free, dairy-free meal plans, as well as grocery shopping lists, journal pages, and more. This free program will help you beat stress and put you on the path to wholeness in your body. Get your plan now for free at drdoni.com.
Wow. Oh my gosh, I love that. And I think that, it really makes a difference, like you're saying, to do things as a group, in a live group, and to make it fun. Like, so
right.
that sometimes it can seem like making these little changes. First of all, it can seem like, is it really going to make a difference? Like, is making sure I get clean water or making sure I get 10 minutes of exercise, is it really going to make that much difference? But when you do it like this, you can get your mind out of it a little bit and just try it. Just go, okay, let me just try these little things that take me a few minutes each day. And then over 30 days, be able to look back and see, did it make a difference for you? What kind of difference? What are some of the things that your players notice after 30 days?
Sleep. Yes, sleep. It's so fundamental. And they realize, because you can see your score history. So you can see, I didn't make my point. I didn't make my point here and here. So you can kind of see the patterns. So that really helps. And they notice and start paying attention to those things that you kind of, take for granted. Sleep is so huge. It's foundational. So that's one of the things we hear about. Oh, right. Self-care.
Wow.
Self-care is a big one. People say, we had a player last season. I remember she started out like, I got everything done but self-care. It was like this to-do. She, by the end of the season, she was like, I love the rejuvenation, getting my rejuvenation point every day. Like, this is something I look forward to. I really enjoy making that time to go lay in the hammock or take a bath or meditate, read my book, do something actively that fills my bucket. We have so much output these days that,
and people can use it as people can use it as their excuse. Cause women, it takes it's hard sometimes to forgive yourself and to allow yourself to do those things. So when they're playing, they can go, oh, well, I've got to go lay on the hammock for 10 minutes and read so I can get my point. Right.
Right.
I love it. No, it's so true, because like our generation, we especially, it was considered selfish or self-indulgent to take time to go sit on the hammock, especially if you've got work to do, or you're a mom, or you've got things, you got laundry to do, and you're going to go sit on the hammock, but,
right.
But when it's so important, in terms of, just that stress recovery time. And
oh yeah,
I love that when you have a way to communicate with yourself and with others, to say, okay, I'm going to do this because I need the point for my team and my point for the day. Then you can kind of get out of your own way to get it done.
I really wanted to point out to you, absolutely. I really wanted to point out to you too, Dr. Doni, that this is a tool not just for patients, but for practitioners, because what it does is it's like we're doing the daily hand holding that doctors can't do. Like, you can tell your patients what they need to do to feel better. You do the testing, you're like, here's your food sensitivity stuff, and I see this, and you might want to incorporate this supplement, make these changes, and then they have to go home and do it. Yeah. And that can be a lonely process. For Danna and I, it was, because we didn't have Thyroid30 when we started. But this is a tool that practitioners can use to help their patients implement their recommendations. So it's like you can tell them what to do, and we help answer the question of how to actually do that and how to live the lifestyle, and not just live it and, stay committed, but to enjoy it, to embrace it.
And, I've seen some doctors and coaches and therapists and whatever, where they have, they have a little packet and they say, because I can't spend time with you, here's some recipes and what. Okay, but that's a handful of things, right? You can give your patients, a handful of recipes and be like, here's a blog, or here's, I try this, whatever. But then it's every single day. So on our site, we have all of those resources so that you can kind of feel confident and, just confident in sending your patients there, because it's for thyroid patients.
I love that. And for people to be able to go and just use those resources and then join you on that journey.
Right.
I'm curious. I mean, we've covered a lot of what would be potential obstacles for people, but what would you say, what are the things that you find are the main roadblocks for people making these changes?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know one of the big ones is that, there's several, right? Where do you start? Testing, getting a full thyroid panel. Also, I know there's a lot of people who feel overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And that's a huge roadblock. And that's one of the main things when Ginny and I first started out. We were like, we want to make this simple. We want to make the website have lots of white space so that their brains, the patients, when they come to the website, they aren't bombarded with lots of information, to start with. We really wanted to simplify it so that they didn't feel overwhelmed, so that they didn't feel like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to do that. So for me, overwhelm, I think is definitely a really big one. What would you say, Ginny?
Yeah. I think that's a big one. We hear from so many people who say, I just don't even know where to begin. It's too much, and I'm busy, and I've got, so many kids at home, and I work, and I just can't. So yeah, just trying to reduce the overwhelm. I think one of the personal roadblocks, I think, is like the sort of foundational step is the mindset. And that can take a lot of different shapes. Like Danna was saying, she sort of got stuck for a while in like a victim mindset of, I'm stuck here. This happened to me. There's nothing I can do about it. Shifting out of that is really powerful. And I think the first step in doing that is wanting it. The first step in obtaining something is wanting it. That was rock bottom for me. I am so over this. I can't live like this anymore. Something has to change. I want to feel better. And then I think, after you decide, I want to feel better, I'm ready to learn, to be curious, to embrace this and to do my best, is you have to believe in your own self-worth. And, like what Brene Brown calls worthiness. I think that's another big roadblock for people, maybe especially women, feeling like everyone else's needs are more important than my own. This is selfish for me. I know as a chef, someone who loves food, shared that love with my husband. It took me a while. I mean, I didn't just find out, I should probably give up gluten and dairy and then do it the next day. It took me a couple months. There was a whole grieving process. I had to say goodbye to, all my favorite stuff. And now I've just learned.
First you had to eat all the gluten in the house up, right?
Well, let's clean it all out of the house, right?
Yes.
Yeah. But also I ran into that, people are going to be inconvenienced. People will be disappointed because when they come here, they expect me to make something that's traditionally delicious. Yeah. Sugars, a baked good, homemade.
So you had to really almost shift your identity or your definition of yourself.
Yes. It was like an identity shift. And, I just had to say, you know what? My health is worth a little bit of inconvenience or disappointment. And I have to trust that my friends and family members are going to love me just as much.
Mhm.
And I want to
And-
mention, Ginny, really quick,
Yes.
when you were talking about the mindset shift, it reminded me that it's kind of twofold, okay? Because you say you have to really want it, right?
Mhm.
But the thing is, you went to the doctor. I went to the doctor. Okay, we wanted it. I wanted to feel better. I went to the doctor. I got my answer. They said I had Hashimoto's. I got my pill. I went home. I wanted it, right? It wasn't that I didn't. But then the realization that you have to take your health into your own hands, and that it's kind of going to be a huge shift and maybe some work, and it's not going to be easy. That's a whole other level of wanting. You have to really
Yes.
get to that point where you really want it that bad that you know you have to do several things.
And
That's
like
what
Jenny's saying, you have to be willing to realize that other people in your life might have a response to that. They might feel disappointed, and it's that codependency, right? I mean, I think you guys are speaking to that, where we tend to be kind of codependent on what other people's responses are, and we almost make ourselves less important as a way to avoid disappointing people. But to the extent that we do that, we're not really helping our own health very much. And so when you hit that point where you realize it, and then you can, it's from that awareness. I think you're really both saying that you had a wanting, but also an awareness that made you realize at a certain point, from then going forward, you had a choice. You were like, I'm either going to choose to eat the same old way because I am afraid of what other people will think if I make a change, or I'm going to eat in a new way because I'm worth it and I want my health to change. Even if that means other people are going to ask me questions or not want to come over, I'm going to make those changes for myself. So,
Or even if it's going to be hard work.
Yes, 1,000%, Dr. Doni. I mean, and I think another way of saying what you said is, I'm either going to keep eating these foods that are actually making me really sick and making it really hard to even feel like a functional human being because I'm afraid of disappointing someone, or I'm just going to, get over it and say, okay, this is it. We're doing this. I'm going gluten-free, dairy-free, whatever it is, And I think maybe this is sort of shifting gears a little bit, but sort of, flowing in the same direction. I think part of that is shifting from this attitude of aggression towards ourselves that's really culturally ingrained.
Yeah.
We live in these extreme times. It's like, you can't just go for a walk. You got to do super mega boot camp. And,
Right.
everything's just like, so, it's like, you can't just take one supplement. You've got to take 15 of these, pills, whatever it is, this aggression towards ourselves, shifting that to an attitude of compassion towards ourselves.
Yes.
And when you start to build that awareness of like grains for, Danna and I had that same experience. You start to look at those things differently. This isn't serving me anymore. And I don't want to hurt myself because when I do that, I actually can't show up for the people I love and care about, like my son, my husband, even my dog, my friends and family. I can't be, and including myself, I can't achieve my dreams if I'm going to keep doing these things that are hurting myself. So I want to shift that from, into what the Buddhists call loving kindness.
I love that.
This unshakable sense of I'm worthy of taking good care of myself the same way I take care of others. I deserve that too.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, those are really beautiful words. And I think you're right. Like a lot of times I think about how we think we're supposed to be a superhuman, or a superhero, and withstand all stress. And we put a lot of expectation on ourselves to be something other than human. And even like you're mentioning, like take it to the extremes of diet change or extremes of fasting or extremes of exercise. And I think with thyroid is a perfect example of a health issue that's not going to do well with extremes. It's in the extremes that the thyroid actually does worse. So it's kind of like a lesson in finding balance for yourself And I love how you really explained that it's very unique. You know, you can't just say, here's exactly the diet or exactly the exercise for everybody with thyroid. No, it's got to be where, how do we guide you to be compassionate with yourself in order to discover what's the right diet and exercise for you? So
and that can go and beyond. It goes beyond diet and exercise too. I think one thing a lot of thyroid patients can relate to is a difficulty with speaking their truth, with speaking up for themselves. And that's that same thing. I'm gonna not say when somebody made me uncomfortable, or I'm not okay with something. You know what? That really was not okay with me. To be able to say that is like so freeing.
Yeah.
And I think that's another cultural thing that we just sort of bear, you know, we don't want to have confrontation. We don't want to make anyone uncomfortable, and like setting those healthy boundaries. You know, it goes right along with the nutrition and
I can imagine
all the other
being
aspects of the lifestyle.
I can imagine being somewhere and ordering something and the friend going, oh, that's right, she has to have, you know, gluten-free or whatever and before I would have been like, well, you know, and then when you finally own it, you're like, yep, that's me. I'm the one. I need gluten-free. I need grain-free. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm okay. I'm happy to be me. You know, it's the shift in your brain where you're just like, nope, I'm going to own this.
Yeah. And it's, at first it feels, I know sometimes when people first shift into speaking, and I love, by the way, this comment, Ginny, because of course this is the throat chakra, which has to do with expressing yourself. And so it's so interesting, right? That the energy of our neck is right where the thyroid is. And so as we learn to express ourselves, we're actually helping our thyroid. In fact, some of the exercises for thyroid even include singing, you know, and kind of getting that energetic and circulation going through the neck area. But I think it's such an amazing point about how at first, when you start to kind of express yourself that way, whether it's a boundary or a desire or a need, at first it feels weird, you know, and at first you're like, I don't know, and it's like a big deal. But then once you start to do it, it becomes easier, and you can feel that sense of freedom. It's not like you are having to state those things all the time necessarily, but then you just know for yourself that you're able to if you need to. And that alone is just builds your level of freedom in yourself and in your
empowering
life.
Well, and aren't we all there right now as a planet, just with learning how to speak our truths, how to say these things aren't okay. And I really want to challenge myself to be able to say those things out loud in a way that isn't going to just result in an argument. It's not about, you know, just always duking it out or being, you know, it's like just learning that art of being able to speak your truth in a way that works and can be heard. And so that you feel heard, they feel heard, everybody's needs are, you know, valued.
I love it. Wow. Well, this is just so fun to get to talk with you. And I just love what you created for people. I'm definitely going to be suggesting it for patients and anyone else who's really, because even someone who I would think even what you guys have developed would help someone who doesn't have thyroid issues.
Absolutely.
You know? Right? Because it comes back to some of those same lifestyle
fundamentals
and dietary things.
Right.
Sleep is, you know, one of my favorite things to talk about. And the tricky thing with that is, I mean, there's those of us, and I include myself because I'm often one of these people who skimps on sleep because I've got so many other things to do, and I don't want the day to be over yet, and so end up with a few hours of sleep because I just stay up too late. And then there's other people who just because of their hormone imbalances and stress exposure, their body just not, even if they want to fall asleep, they can't fall asleep. And so how important it is to help people to solve either way for themselves so that they can get that essential sleep. I think you were saying, was it Jenny, that you were saying like when you get sleep, how much of a difference it makes?
Oh, it's so foundational. And, you know, we emphasize to people, it's not even so much about getting a perfect score every day and doing all of the 8 daily rituals every day. At the outset, everyone goes through this setup process because our needs and our where we're at on our healing journey is always it's a dynamic journey, right? So thank you, it's always evolving. So when you start, you pick an area to focus on, so that on those days that are really crazy, oh, well, my main focus this time, though, I really wanted to commit to the recharge ritual, to getting my sleep every night. And it's really surprising to people how taking that simple approach, even just picking one thing, if you want to do all 8 every day, and you do need to score yourself and all, but if you really want to just focus on one ritual, that can be so incredibly powerful and life-changing as far as reducing symptoms and, hair loss diminishing, and obviously fatigue going away, and weight issues because of people not prioritizing sleep. And that one's a big eye-opener for people. But I think even just focusing on any one of those rituals can be we can't underestimate the power of the simple approach and of baby steps, just taken consistently over time. And give yourself a year or two and look at the before and after. You won't believe it if you just make that commitment to continue making small, obtainable steps towards your healing goals.
Yeah, I have one patient and she is a Hashimoto's patient. She, when I said that to her first at the beginning of her healing process, she said, I think I'm going to need fetus steps. And I thought that was so cute.
Right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Micro steps.
Like as small as you need them to be, because, these little teeny things you can implement in an incremental way and learn through the process makes a big change in the long run. And I think when we do make these small steps like that, it happens differently than if you try to just make a big change, because when you try to make, I find, a fast and big change, it's not as lasting. You tend to be able to only do it for a certain amount of time, and then you just fall off the wagon, so to speak. But when we can make these small incremental changes, that it actually becomes part of your routine and your world and your reality in a different way, so that it can actually become lasting change.
One simple example would be, I remember when I first started kind of embracing lifestyle as a supportive tool for me and my symptoms, that I wanted to drink filtered water, and I wanted to drink water with lemon every morning. And I have been doing that since 2014. Wow. But every day.
It just started with one little, just one goal. Yeah.
Wow. We lived in another country, and we ordered a Berkey, and I drank my filtered water, and I always had a limon, even though it was different looking. And somehow I always had them every day. I always had them around. I was always, when I'm at the store, need to pick some up. But when it first started, it wasn't like that. Now I don't even think about it. Neither does my family. Everybody knows that is what I drink every morning.
Well, and then those little baby steps, when you take them, they can become your new normal, so that it doesn't feel like this drastic extreme change. Yeah. We really encourage people to take those baby steps, because we have a psychologist on our advisory team, and she says, when you go too huge, that's why these 30-day challenges can fail some people. When they go too huge, they focus too much on the perfect score, on completely overhauling every single aspect of their life. You can overwhelm your nervous system, and you basically go into fight or flight response.
Well, it becomes a stress, and that's, it's the thing that leads to the thyroid issues to begin with, are the various stresses. But if we can stress ourselves out with the changes we're making. So I think, it's trying to find that middle ground where we can make these changes in a non-stressful way.
Finding that balance, but more harmony, what works for you. Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like to share before we end?
I just was thinking about support, as talking about the biggest roadblocks to healing. And I think that's something I see so many people in the thyroid community, so many thyroid patients don't realize that you don't have to go it alone. And it's really better and more fun if you don't.
It's so much more fun.
I get it. I'm a lone wolf. I'm like an extroverted introvert. I love my alone time. I never really realized, even starting, as we were starting to create Thyroid30, how much I was going to really benefit from and enjoy the community support aspect. And I think the thing it's really shown me is that it's really incredible what we're capable of as individuals when we have the support we need.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And sometimes it's almost hard to choose that because you're thinking, oh, I could just do this myself. And is this group going to have expectations of me? And, this kind of ways of talking ourselves out of it. But yeah, there is something about being, especially right now when so many of us are in our own homes alone, or not interacting in our environments and communities as much as maybe we would have been in the past. Like, this is such a chance to connect online, right? This is all is it all online and by video and social media? Yeah.
Yes.
So you can join from anywhere and be present with other humans in the same process.
Oh yeah. I mean, we've got a Swedish team that plays that. We've got players from all over the world. It's been amazing to get to know so many other people, and just fun to always come away at the end of the season feeling like I'm not alone. There's this whole amazing army of thyroid warriors out there who are on this path alongside me, even if they're not physically beside me, which is kind of a good thing these days. I mean, when we're having to social distance, it's nice that this is something you can continue to do to support your health, to connect with other humans, without putting yourself at risk or whatever.
And especially if, maybe the other people in your home environment may not completely be understanding or on the same page, but you go into a group like this with other people who are wanting to make mindset shifts or make dietary changes or focus on improving their health, like that, it's sometimes hard to find that group of people on your own. But if you guys have created that, so all people have to do is join in and show up, and they've got a whole group of people with the same, working on the same goals. So I think that's remarkable and really special. So thank you again for creating this and for sharing your stories and your passions. And I really see that that's, been rewarding for both of you.
Well,
Very
we
much
really
so.
Hope that our partnership and what we've created together can help other people. We love to help other people. We both love to cheerlead and support other people, and our community and our players, and even the people we haven't met yet out there who are like so down and out, and they've forgotten, like we forgot, that it was even possible to feel like themselves again. Like maybe somebody out there will hear this and come our way and realize I'm not in this alone, and I can feel better, and I can get empowered. There are things I can do, and I can do it in a way that isn't going to just make my life drudgery, or it's not going to be right like the dreary meals and the boot camp and the just constant like discipline, and all that people get stuck on those things they can't have, right? You know what I mean? We really focus on look at all that just our stories. We marvel at this with one another all the time. Look at how much this diagnosis has taught us, made us grow, made us evolve as human beings.
Wow. That's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for sharing and for being here with me today. And I look forward to talking to you both very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to How Humans Heal. If you liked this episode, leave a rating and a review. And for more resources, visit drdoni.com.